Hello and welcome to Innovated. My name is Alexander and I am the host of the Forest System. So today's video is basically about how I found out I had DID, as well as all the times I should have found out I had DID without actually realizing that that's what it was. So there's going to be a trigger warning. I'm not 100% sure how much of it I'm going to cover, so I will put up right here what the trigger warning is for. Alright, now let's get into the video. So first of all, if you hadn't noticed the title of this video, yes, a majority of this story is about how I tried to convince myself I didn't have DID, because I did that for a long time. Okay, so the first time I can remember intentionally saying, oh, I don't have DID, is Clarissa tried to tell me in the inner world that I was a part of a system. This was around the body's age 11, 10 maybe even. We were really young, and Clarissa tried to tell me, hey, there's more than just you in this body. And I was like, no, but I also wasn't the host at the time, so I don't really remember a lot from that age range anyways. Most of my memories are in the inner world there, so it should have made sense to me, but it didn't. So she said that, and I started fronting again, and I thought I had woken up from a nap, so I was just like, that was a weird dream, and then I went on with my day. And then after that, probably around age 12, Tyr tried to tell me again. Now when Tyr tried to tell me, it was because I had found out Clarissa's creation story, because she had had a dream, and dreaming with DID is very interesting, so I can watch my alters dream sometimes. So basically Clarissa had had a dream that was basically her memory of her creation, which is a very interesting story, which I'm sure she'll share at some time. But basically, I had a dream about this, or she had a dream about this, and I watched it, and then afterwards Tyr was like, hey Alex, you're multiple, and then I was like, nah, and then he was like, okay, well, then explain this, and then I came up with some bad explanation for it that didn't fully make sense, and then he was like, okay, then explain this, then explain this, then explain this, then explain this, and he kept giving me things to explain, and I didn't have any real answers, but I still was so set on the fact that I did not have DID, I did not have alters, that I just absolutely didn't register. I woke up the next day remembering this, and I was again like, huh, that was a weird dream. Because that's what I always did, every time. And then I also, when I was in the inner world, I always just thought I was having a weird recurring dream. Like, for example, I tried to change something in our inner world, and Tyr came up and was like, you can't do that. And I was like, why? And he goes, it's one of the rules. And I was like, well, fuck that, this is my dream, I can do what I want. So they kept fighting with me because I kept putting paintings up on the walls in the inner world that weren't in my room, even though I had a room. So he kept showing me, here's your room, and I would still change things in the main room because I was convinced that it was just a dream. But because I found out Clarissa's backstory, which is very futuristic, basically, I'm not going to give you the whole thing, but basically her backstory is that she's from a different dimension. And Lucian took advantage of this. This is back when he was a persecutor. And he took advantage of this, and he convinced me that the world was about to end. So that was fun. He kept like having, because we would have nightmares about like giant natural disasters happening or whatever, and I was convinced they were premonitions, and it was a very confusing few years. That was probably age 12, age 13. And then, okay. This one, I honestly, sometimes looking back on some of the stuff I did, I cannot believe how fucking stupid I was. Like, I know it's like, no, that's not actually what it is, and I know I'm being hard on myself, but I look back on this and I'm like, oh my god, you dumbass, what the hell? So basically, when I would get super panicked, so before Tyr was, okay, so Tyr before Zonk was. Tyr was our primary protector. He was both primary protector and gatekeeper, because Zonk was also a persecutor. I was also a persecutor. We had a lot of persecutors in our system for a long time. But basically, Tyr, when he was the primary protector, anytime I would start freaking out and panicking, and basically my stepdad is not a great person, and he would, if I started having a panic attack, he would start screaming at me and he would say, knock it off, stop being over dramatic, basically, you know, whatever. So I would force switches with Tyr in order to stop panic attacks, and I thought I just had a magic ability to not have a panic attack. That's seriously what I convinced myself. I convinced myself I just had like this, like, mind power where I could be having a panic attack and then I could just like turn it off, because that's how panic attacks work. I don't know, I was just so absolutely livid that I didn't have DID. I remember being so upset anytime anyone in the system would try to tell me I had DID. I think they tried to tell me probably a total of like 6 or 7 times, hey, you're in a system, and I was like, nope. So basically, okay, so when I say I'm hearing voices, I'm gonna clarify that right now, so I'm going into this. So basically, I'm not hearing voices like externally, I'm hearing it in my head. So like when I hear Tyr talking to me, or when I hear anyone else in the system talking to me, it's almost like hearing someone else's thoughts. For a while I thought I could read people's minds because I was still trying to convince myself I didn't have DID, so I convinced myself I was hearing people, like just random strangers on the street or people in my classroom. I was like, oh, I'm reading her mind right now. And then people will be like, oh my god, you dumbass. So that was literally how the system functioned for a while, with me trying to say I didn't have DID and literally everyone else knowing. So that was fun for them. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I was such a pain in the ass. Okay, but basically, November of 2018, my eating disorder had gotten really, really bad. Like, so it had been worse before. Okay, so we have to do some history with the eating disorder now. So basically, I had had a really bad eating disorder where I would literally push people out of front when they were eating in order to get rid of food somehow. It was that bad. Got to the point where I was severely underweight, and I'm not going to say numbers because I don't want to, like, encourage anyone's behaviors anyway, because I know when I would hear people talking about their like eating disorder recover stories, if they would say how low a weight they got, I would be like, oh, I can go lower than that. So I'm not gonna say how low I got, but it was really bad, and basically my eating disorder started getting bad again. I was eating probably once every 2, maybe 3 days, and I was forcing people out of front so I could not eat again. It was really bad. So basically I go to the doctor, and clearly there was like weight loss, so my doctor asked me about it and I just broke down crying, and I was explaining the situation. I was just like, I can't keep doing this. I'm just not eating, and I hate that I'm not eating, but I can't stop. And then I'm hearing like this thought, because once again, when Lucian was a persecutor, he would encourage the eating disorder tendencies, because he also has a pretty severe eating disorder. He still has it. I'm in a bit of a better place than he is at this point. But he would sit there, and when I wouldn't eat, he would encourage me to continue not eating and to continue getting rid of calories. So basically, I said, and I just have like this these terrible thoughts that are constantly attacking me, telling me not to eat. And my doctor goes, "Are you hearing voices?" And I said, "Well, I mean, kind of, but it's not like, I don't think I'm schizophrenic." And then she was like, "Well, even if you are schizophrenic, I have patients with schizophrenia who just take their meds and they live perfectly normal lives." And she referred me to a mental hospital. Now, this mental hospital basically was an eating disorder treatment center, and they also had a trauma program. Now, they wanted me to go full inpatient, but I was in the middle of doing a show at my school, so I chose to do a partial outpatient program. So basically what I would do is I would go in during school hours. I converted all my classes to online, so I was doing my online classes, and I was still participating in the show, and I just missed my choir and my drama class. But basically that was basically most of my month of December, was that partial inpatient program. So while I was there, they had me take a psych eval, because at that point I had been saying, okay, yeah, I'm hearing voices, and I didn't want to tell anyone because my birth mom convinced me that I was crazy, because she had figured out we had DID a long time ago. So she had said that I was crazy, and I was convinced that if I told anyone I was hearing voices, that I would be locked in a mental hospital forever. So even the thought of being in a mental hospital at all was terrifying for me. So finally, when I finally was just like, yeah, fine, I'm hearing voices, they gave me a psych eval. And when they gave me a psych eval, there were questions on it that I did not realize were abnormal. I remember taking the psych eval, and I remember seeing a question that was like, I frequently black out or like forget parts of my day. And I was like, oh, that happens to everyone, right? And then I remember the person administering the psych eval was like, nope. That's all she said. She just shook her head and said, nope. And I was like, oh, all right then. And then I circled yes. And then I continued with the psych eval, and I was just like, man, like, this is okay. So after I took the psych eval, they finally gave me the diagnosis, which was of dissociative identity disorder. But then there was some weird thing where the doctors didn't fully agree on the diagnosis because stigma, and basically one of my psychiatrists was saying, yes, you have DID. The other psychiatrist was like, no, you don't have DID, you just have PTSD with strong symptoms of dissociation. And so then I took that and initially, probably about the first week, because my entire, like, the people who were around me a lot were like, oh, that makes so much sense. So I was like, oh yeah, I have DID. But then I was like, oh no, I'm faking, I don't have DID, I just dissociate a lot. And so then I started convincing myself I was faking, because I would be co-conscious with alters, and I would be like, why am I acting like this? I'm faking. I'm just pretending I have alters because it's fun. And then, like, I seriously got to the point where, in order to convince myself I wasn't faking, I had to attempt to do my alters handwriting when they weren't the ones fronting. It was literally because Gideon is, so I'm ambidextrous. So I was convinced, oh, I'm just writing weird with both hands to, like, prove it's real or something. And so basically, Gideon has super, super neat handwriting, and he's left-handed. So I tried to write neat with my left hand, and I can't write neat. Like, no matter how hard I try, no matter how slowly I write, I just cannot write neat. And so I tried to do that. I tried to write in cursive with my right hand. I can't write in cursive. Violetta writes entirely in cursive. Clarissa writes partially in cursive. So I basically, doing that, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not faking. But I think the tipping point for when I wasn't faking is Chase, who's from Tennessee, has a very strong Tennessee accent, and I was co-conscious when he was fronting. And he goes, God damn it. And he just says, Alex, how hard are you thinking about doing this accent right now? And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not faking. So there are good and bad days. Some days are worse than others. Some days I'm like, I'm faking the whole time. And I also get really kind of insecure about my gender identity sometimes, because our body is female to male. And the fact that I have female alters every once in a while, I'm like, maybe I'm not trans. But then I front and I'm like, oh god, my body is wrong. And I'm like, never mind, yes I am. But it's still a struggle. But I'm really getting to the point where I'm starting to believe myself and believe that I'm valid and real, and I really just hope any other DID systems that have a similar struggle, or any other alters in DID systems that have a similar struggle, really can accept that you're valid, you're real, and yes, you are part of a system, and that's okay, that's valid, and that's real. And I think that's it for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, please feel free to give a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video I make. Bye!